If you dig the twisted, admire the outlandish, and are enamored by the unusual, you're in the right place. True crime, the supernatural, the unexplained, now you're speaking our language. If you agree, join us as we dive into the darker side. You know, because it's more fun over here. Welcome to Total Conundrum.
Warning, some listeners may find the following content disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Ha 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 ha.
Boo, did I scare you, Traci?
Totally, Jeremy. Hey, Conundrum crew. Welcome to our special Halloween Spooktacular episode of Total Conundrum. It's that time of year when things go bump in the night and candy corn reigns supreme.
And speaking of sweet treats, we've got a trick-or-treat bag filled with ghostly goodness for you. In this episode, Traci has been busy chatting with some brave souls who've had eerie encounters with the supernatural.
You betcha. We've got some spirited folks ready to share their ghostly tales from the beyond. Get ready to be spooked and amused because things are about to get fantastically funny.
Prepare yourself for some bone-rattling laughter as they tell their chilling tales. And remember, even ghosts love a good joke.
You're not wrong, Jeremy. So whether you're listening in the daylight or huddled under your covers with a flashlight, we promise to entertain and maybe even send a shiver or two down your spine.
And hey, remember, Halloween is all about sharing the spooky. So tell your friends, family, and anyone with a pulse about this episode. Sharing is scaring, after all. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
So grab some Kool-Aid and your favorite candy, unless you're like me and hide it from Jeremy. Let's kick off our hilarious Halloween ghost extravaganza.
Hey, why are you hiding the good stuff from me? So not cool at all. Well, anyways, whether you're tricking or treating or just sitting at home handing out candy, we're thrilled to have you here for this spooktacular ride. Hang on to your witch's hat and enjoy the show.
Stay eerie, Conundrum crew, and prepare for a ghoulish good time.
But hey, before we scared the pants off you, we've got a trick-or-treat for you. Trailers from our partners in crime, Barrel Age Flicks and Zach Solved Mysteries. A big shout out to those fabulous folks for joining forces with us.
Hey, this is Ron. Do you like movies?
Hey, this is Ragnar. Y'all like alcohol?
Hey guys, this is Stu. Do you like punishments?
Hey, this is Goot. Do you like cinephiles?
Hey everybody, I'm Chase. Do you guys like alcohol poisoning?
If you like all of that, then check us out at Barrel Age Flicks. We're on Apple, Spotify, and all the other platforms out there.
Welcome to Zach Solved Mysteries, the most important podcast you'll ever hear in your life.
I know enough about most things to be inaccurate about everything.
We're not just a podcast, we're an experience.
This story f***s, dude.
Prepare to have your life transformed because not listening to us could be a grave mistake.
You must wake up every day and say, today's the day someone's gonna murder me.
We're not just tackling the classic mysteries of the past, we're rewriting history itself.
Robert Stack, I think, had dirt on people.
Forget everything you thought you knew about unsolved mysteries, or any sort of mystery.
Maybe there were giants. Who knows? Who cares?
Subscribe now to Zach Solved Mysteries anywhere you get your podcasts. Get solved.
Haha, mystery solved, my bitches.
So now's your chance to give them a real treat and check out their shows too.
Hoorah! Hey, Conundrum crew. Sorry I wasn't a part of this fun episode, but unfortunately I had to work. Adulting sucks sometimes, but on the bright side, I still got to do the fun part of editing the episode. So I will be your narrator in this spooktacular episode. Here's Dawn, a friend of the Conundrum crew, sharing the spooky stories of her haunted bar, Dawn's Corner Bar in Dundas, Minnesota.
Hello. All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what was going on. I couldn't get my microphone to work on my computer. I was like, what the heck?
Well, and I dropped my phone in water last night, so I didn't know if it was going to work or not. And I tried it, and it didn't work. And I put it in some rice. Oh, yeah, that's a brand new phone. I just got it. I'm like, shit.
Do you have insurance or anything on it?
Yeah, I do.
Well, that's good.
Oh, yeah, it's working now. So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That sucks. You pay so much for those damn things.
I know. This one was low than $100. I'm like, shit.
Oh, I know. And then you don't even, it's not even worth keeping your old ones anymore because you get so much for a trade-in. And I'm like,
yeah.
And then everybody always wants the newest and best.
Right. Exactly. That's how I am.
Totally. Yeah. So I don't know if you saw my message from earlier, but would you be okay if I record our conversation so I can use some of the stories and stuff on the podcast and then we can advertise? Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. So when I worked at the bar all those years ago as a waitress, I remember there being stories of an old man and a little kid that haunted the bar. Yep, a little girl. And so when I was working at the bar, I remember like weird stuff started happening at my house. And my son was probably about 3 years old at the time. And so all, toys would be going off in his room and all these, like I would take batteries out of things that kept going off. And then I just felt like uneasy and wasn't sleeping. And so, like I said, he was either 2 or 3 at the time. And he had this little Tykes engine. And every morning I would wake up and that engine would be in the middle of his room. Then I would hear things, the engine had this little oil can that you'd have to like stick down into it and it would make like a glug glug sound. And like you were putting oil into the engine. And that engine thing would go off. It would start up. It would do all these things. And this went on for like a couple weeks. And then one night I heard this plastic bag like crumpling and, that plastic bag noise. It kept going off and I was too afraid to get up and see what it was. And the next morning, the plastic bag was next to the engine and it had in a little girl's hand or a little kid's handwriting a name on it. And I can't remember what the name is. Well, my kids weren't old enough to be able to write. And so I called a friend that was really into ghosts and stuff. And I'm like, you need to help me. I don't know what's going on. I've got to get this thing out of my house. So she came over and she saged for me. And then she told me I had to stand there in our house and say, I'm sorry, you can't be here. You can't, I have to bring you back to where you came from because I assumed it was from the bar. And that night I drove back to the bar for my shift and I felt like my hair on the back of my neck and everywhere was like standing up on end. And then I didn't have anything else happen again.
I've never had it like that. But, the story is she died I live upstairs.
Oh, do you? Okay.
She died in a little, I think they died in, I don't know if it was the old guy or the little girl that died. I think it was the little girl.
Okay.
She died of scarlet fever in the room next to my bedroom.
Oh my gosh. So that was probably in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I keep that door closed. I go out there every once in a while. I got 2 chairs out there. I got a bed. I got it all set up like a room for her. I just leave it there. It's my spare bedroom, but we don't use it. I don't go out there very much. And I've never fucked with her or anything. I've just left her alone.
That's good.
Downstairs, we've been downstairs before, and me and Traci would close the bar up at like 3:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden the TVs would start coming on. The jukebox would just start playing. The lights would turn on.
Oh my God.
And we felt that she was there. Somebody was there with us.
Right.
And then I used to live out at Bucky's house when I used to date Bucky. And I used to close the bar by myself. And I'd leave the bar. And in the back of my car, I'd feel like there was somebody behind me.
That is the creepiest feel. And that's what I felt like the whole time I was driving back to the bar. I don't think I lasted much longer after that. I was too afraid that one of them was going to follow me home again.
Right. Yeah. And I know Linda Mann, when she worked there, she had little dealings with her that the girl would come out and want to play ball. And Linda would say, I cannot play right now. You have to go back. I can play later. And she'd go away. She'd bring a ball out and want to play.
Oh my gosh.
And
I remember
seen
Linda
that.
telling stories about that.
Yeah.
Well,
And then I know Kevin Tussing, the cop, one night, I believe it was him, he came driving by and he thought there was somebody in the building. He came up to the window and there was a face in the window and then it went away.
Oh my God.
You've seen that?
Well, and I
So,
remember some patrons of the bar too, like that one guy that was always there. I think he had dark hair. I remember him telling stories about, I think it was the old man.
Yep. I've never dealt with the old man. I've always dealt with the little girl.
Okay.
With living up here, I have a hallway light that's a motion light. And it coming from the front bedroom that goes out to my hallway into my living room, and I can see it through my bedroom. It'll come on every once in a while. It used to. It has not for a long time. When we first moved here, I was like, okay, this is freaky. I'm like, okay, these people are walking around my house.
Right.
And my dogs can see it.
Oh, I'm sure, staring off into nothing or growling at. Oh.
Jackson, my past Yorkie, he just passed away last year. He would sit at the end of my bed and bark into my hallway when the light would come on.
That is so freaky.
Now, I just bought 2 little new dogs, and they're like probably 3 months old now. The old one does it too. He barks it off into the corners of the room, so he must see it. But the other one doesn't see it.
That is, I don't know how you do it. I mean, I'm sure they don't. They never seem.
They don't bother you. No,
yeah,
I just let them do their thing and whatever. And I've never had anything moved.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
as long as they're not hiding your stuff.
No, they're not. They're just. I think they just make themselves at home here. I think they hang out in their room up front. That's where they hang out.
And that's their space and.
Yep, and that's what I gave it to him because I shut the door and I said, "Well, that's your guys' area."
Well, that's a good way to share your space. You stay out of my way, I'll stay out of yours.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I remember at the lower part of the bar, where the pool table and dartboards there was pool table and dartboards down there where that old safe is, that wall safe.
Yep.
I remember always being so creeped out. Cleaning, at the end of the night when we'd be cleaning and stuff, I would hate going down there at the end of the night and clean.
Yeah, that was the old general store.
Okay, and I
years
remember.
Ago, and then it was a bank, and then that's where Jesse James first came when he came to Northfield.
That's what I thought. I remembered something about that, and I just remember that area. Like I would go there for dart league and stuff, and it wouldn't bother me. Or if I was waitressing while the bar was active. Nothing bothered me, but if I went down there at the end of the night, I cleaned that area damn fast and, would get out of there. Yeah. But the other thing I remember is I would never go into the basement. I remember one time I tried to go down there and I went about halfway down the stairs and I was like, nope, I'm just a waitress. I don't switch kegs.
No, it's a dirt floor, limestone wall basement. There is like these old wooden doors over things. There's a wooden door that we keep shut all the time.
Okay.
And we don't ever open it. And I've opened it before and it's gotten shut. I don't know if they shut it, that's their
space.
It's an old cooler.
Okay.
And that door stays closed. I always tell everybody, if you go down there, don't go to that room. That's where the ghost lives.
That's awesome. Well, at least you've learned how to divide your space with them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I don't mind. I mean, some lady wanted to come in and do a seance or whatever the thing, trying to get the whatever. I told her no. I said, you know what? Don't bother them.
No.
Just leave them. They're happy.
No, if they're not doing anything that is, malevolent or anything like that, no, don't stir up the activity. No way.
No, I said, no, just let them do their thing. They're fine.
Right. Well, and you've got 2 big conduits, there, because you said the walls down there are limestone. And natural stone is a big conduit for the paranormal. And then you got the river across the street too. So, and if they're not, if they're letting you be and you're letting them be, no, I wouldn't let anybody come in and do an investigation or seance or anything either.
No.
Before you know it, you're going to have red-eyed demons coming at you from the basement.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I don't want to deal with that. Yeah. I think that article was in the Northfield News, I believe.
Yeah, I was looking for it online and I couldn't find it anywhere because I thought it had.
Or the Fayetteville Daily News.
Yeah. I even checked, like, I just was Googling everything I could think of. Haunted bar, Halloween edition, Dundas, just haunted bars and Dundas, haunted locations. I tried Brad's, I tried Don's. Neither of them came through with anything. So, I wonder.
I know L&M is haunted also.
Is it? Oh,
yeah, there's something down there Pauline's got. I don't know what it is. I haven't heard the whole story, but I've heard things about it.
Well, with it being Halloween, we thought it'd be fun to kind of,
cool.
Do something, I know tonight I'm going to be a co-host on this podcast called The Conversation Cabin, and she wants us all to share spooky experiences. And so I was going to share mine about that little girl following me home. And then it kind of triggered this whole thing. And I was like, well, and then you said you had some stories. And I'm like, oh, that would be great for some like bonus content. And, and then go ahead and give a shout out to your bar.
Okay, this is Dawn from Dawn's Corner Bar. We're downtown Dundas. We have a full bar and grill and pool and darts and everything.
And you guys still do bands and everything?
Oh, we do not. We have a Halloween party this weekend.
Do you? Awesome.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and I've heard the food there is amazing because when Brad owned it, you guys only had, or we only did like the pizzas and stuff. So
yep, no, we have a full service bar grill.
Nice. And it's you guys, from what I've heard, have done a lot of renovations and stuff too.
Yep. Oh yes, we've fixed the place up a lot, and there's more to come.
Yay. No increase in activity with the renovations?
We're just busy, a lot busier. I mean, we got a patio now.
Okay.
There's we got bar bingo on Saturday nights. We're pretty much full all the time.
That's awesome.
Yep.
But when you guys were renovating, did it ramp up any ghost activity at all?
Nope.
That's good.
Nothing.
So you really have got that relationship with them, which good for you.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, I'm sure, especially with living there. I had completely forgot that there was a whole other level above the bar too.
Oh yeah, there's a full house upstairs.
That's awesome. Well, it's nice for you to just be able, nice commute, walk down the stairs to work.
Right, exactly. Yes, it is.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those stories and stuff with me.
Okay. Yeah, if you do record it or whatever, send me a copy of it.
Oh, for sure. I'll send you a link.
Okay, perfect. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'll get it edited up and I'll put it on. It'll be on all of the like podcasting stream, like or Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on all of those, and then YouTube and stuff as well. So I'll send you a link to it when we get it edited up, and it'll be a fun little segment.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, thank you so much again. And if you think of any other spooky stories or if anybody else has any, we want to start doing like a monthly segment of people sharing their ghost stories, whether they want to call in and talk about it or just write them and we read them. So if you think of anything else or know of anybody else that has any good stories, send them my way.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Oh, well, thanks so much, Don. You have a great day.
Yeah, you too, Tracy. Thank you.
Bye.
Yep, bye.
Hope you guys enjoyed the story from Dawn and her creepy bar. Next up is Dylan, our son, sharing a hair-raising story about a random psychic encounter.
Hey, everybody. We have another special guest on Total Conundrum Podcast for our Halloween episode. We have my son Dylan with us all the way from Columbia, the country, not the city. And he is going to tell us a spooky story that happened to him. Hey, Dylan, how are you?
Hey, Mom, how are you? I'm doing good.
Good. I'm glad you're able to come on and share your little spooky story with us. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. A little bit nervous, but
Yeah, you're
happy to
good.
be.
Just take a deep breath. Just pretend like you're talking to me. So, you had something happen to you when you were in high school. You want
Yeah,
to tell
back
us a
when
little bit
I
about it?
Sure. So back when I was in high school, I think I was doing 4-H. Maybe that was early middle school. I'm not even sure. I was at the Minnesota State Fair, and someone had like just pulled me off to the side and was like, "Hey, this is gonna sound crazy. I received pictures from ghosts. I can't talk to ghosts, but I received pictures, and I'm getting a calling for you." Well, at the time, being so young and kind of interested in this stuff, I was kind of like, okay, well, let's hear what you have to say. But this is kind of strange. I have no idea who you are. I've never seen you before.
So, she was just a
And
random person that was at the state fair that pulled you aside.
just a random person.
Oh,
Never have
my.
seen her. Crazy.
Yeah.
And so she starts telling me that she's getting these pictures of my grandma's house, and she starts describing the place where my grandmother's house is in kind of like the middle, and we've got this big U-shaped driveway, and on the right hand side of this U-shaped driveway, the house being in the middle, is this big barn where at the time I had a bunch of baby goats, and I had all kinds of animals, but I'm losing my train of thought.
So, the baby goats you were raising for 4-H, right? Or was that the sheep that
Right.
or I couldn't remember. I know you did the sheep and chickens and ducks and all of the things. And that's why you were out there quite often, is because they had the farm. We lived in town. And so you had these baby goats that were you had just got these pygmy goats, or a pygmy goat that was pregnant, right?
No, at that
was
time,
a different goat?
That was a different goat. These were the boar goats. So this was like this must have been my last year of 4-H. So I would have
Okay.
had sheep at the fair, and the baby goats would have been after this.
Okay, because that
So,
wasn't more in the winter that you had the goats and stuff, right?
or no, this would have been before that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't even remember, Mother.
Well, I can't remember what I had for dinner last night. So, but so anyway, she was describing all of these things, the house kind of, and then you said that she described the driveway, kind of go on from there.
Yeah, and then she had also mentioned that there was a window looking out of the attic, and it just so happened that window faced the barn. So yes, this would have had to have happened beforehand, or the year before, or the first year I had goats, because at the time I instantly connected and was like, I know exactly what window she's talking about, because I would always feel that there was someone watching me when I went out to go check on the goats, because at that time it was January, and the goats were being born in the middle of the night. So every 2 hours I would take the new goats that were born, in a laundry basket and put them into the basement, and then take the goats that were in the house back out in a laundry basket and give them back to their mothers,
so they could eat
and
stuff.
to eat and stuff, and to give them some warmth
Right.
out of that cold. But it was so strange, because I took the longer path, in which I guess more people would, or the average person would probably say that that's a scarier path, going around the barn and going to the backside of the barn to go into the basement, because I always felt like someone was watching.
So you were
And
trying to avoid the gaze of whatever was giving you that uneasy feeling, basically.
Exactly.
You felt safer taking the longer route than you would have the shorter route.
Exactly.
Okay.
But never understood it until
Right.
this woman told that there's this woman that sits in or an older lady that sits in this rocking chair and looks out that window. And then she went silent for a little bit and came back and goes, "You have to put the rocking chair in the dollhouse back."
How creepy.
And at the time, I kind of was like, what is she talking about? Like, now I have no recollection of what she's saying. I don't connect with any of it. But immediately after, me and my friends were like, my friends were like, you gotta call your grandma, you gotta call your grandma. So I called my grandma, and she tells me, or I asked her at the time, I'm like, what's going on? What are you doing around the house? And she goes, I don't remember who it was, but she had said, someone just helped me move the rocking chair out of the background, or sorry, or in the room. Espérame, estoy grabando podcast por mi mamá. I'm so. Let's see here. Where was I? Sorry, Mom.
Somebody helped her move.
So she tells me that she had just moved the rocking chair and the dollhouse from the attic. And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, like this lady is for real.
Wow. That is crazy. So whatever spirits are up in that attic were so mad that they were reaching out to you, 45 minutes to an hour away to try to get in touch with your grandma to put those things back, because your grandma is probably so stubborn in the head and doesn't believe in that stuff that they maybe tried to communicate with her directly, and she's like, la-di-da-di-da.
She says nothing's wrong with that house.
She's crazy. I know for a fact there's things wrong with that house, but her being crazy is a whole other story.
Well, yes.
This would be my ex almost mother-in-law, so we'll just leave it at that.
Well, and it was interesting too that after this, my good friend's uncle, I think his name was Keith, was really, really into history.
Mm-hmm.
And he took a look at the history of the house. And now this house has a ton of history. Maybe you can go more into that.
Definitely. Well, basically, this house is it's a beautiful, beautiful home, and it resides out in the country on the outskirts of Northfield. It used to be owned at one point by a former senator and governor, Edward John Thigh, I believe. And he actually died in that house, and I think it was 69. Is that what I said when I looked it up?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think it was 69. So he died in the house of emphysema in 69. And when your grandparents, when the first time I went out there, when I was dating your dad in high school, they had this big wrought iron archway that goes over the driveway. And I think, is that still there? Or is
It is.
okay? So there's a big.
It was knocked over by a
storm
truck hauling something once. No, it was a truck hauling something. Hit it, and then they redid it.
Okay. So yeah, there's this big, beautiful, wrought iron archway, and it just says the former home of Edward J. Thigh, or former home of Senator and Governor Edward J. Thigh, or something like that. And back when he lived there, it was a dairy farm. And I think they also had Thigh Orchard too, didn't they? Because there's an apple orchard out there.
Right.
So I think it was Thigh Orchard. And then when your grandparents bought it, and I don't know, I want to say it was in the 80s when they bought it, they switched it over to White Barn Orchard. And now you were saying that Chris, your friend Chris's uncle, was looking into some of the history, and he found that there was more people that died in that house too, correct?
I think if I remember correctly, he had mentioned that I'm pretty sure Edward J. Thigh's, one of his wives, had died in that house as well.
Okay.
And I really don't remember how we got into this, but we came up with a theory that she was jealous and was very much watching everything that
went
Edward
on
J.
around the
Thigh. That went on around the property, and may have been frustrated because he remarried.
Okay. So this house also, I don't even know what year it was built, but it's very old. It's still beautiful. It's been redone and many additions put on, but I know the kitchen and the basement area and the stairway going upstairs, that was the original part of the house. And this house actually has 2 separate upstairs because the one side on the kitchen side ended up, wasn't that for the slaves and stuff at one point?
Yeah, and if I remember correctly too, the slaves were very well treated. It wasn't like the slavery that was going on in the South.
Right.
And but I think there was a separate house for them.
Oh, I wonder if it was that house that was by the pool. Because, yeah, when your grandparents moved in, they filled in the pool. They didn't want that. I remember that. Them telling me about that. I wasn't around back then, but I mean, I was around, but not around them. But there was also, when they bought the house, wasn't it Oscar, I think his name was.
He was the house worker, and he came with the purchase of the house. He
came with the purchase of the house. I remember in high school going out to your grandparents' house, when your dad was living there and stuff, and I got introduced to Oscar, and I had no idea who he was, but your dad basically said that he came with the house.
Could he have died there as well?
I think he actually, if I remember correctly, he died in a nursing home.
Okay.
I think he died in a nursing home. I had completely forgotten about him. It just triggered in my memory banks right now when we were talking about the slave quarters and stuff. So this house, like Dylan, you were saying when we were talking earlier that the barn actually isn't built with nails.
Yeah, no, the barn is so old that they built it with wood pegs, or the Amish built it with wooden pegs.
And that's crazy. And there's a lot of outbuildings and stuff out there. And so I wanted to just touch base a little bit. So Dylan was talking about this rocking chair that got moved up to the attic. And that rocking chair used to reside in the living room. Well, there's 3 living rooms in the house?
Yeah, I think there's 3, or you could call it 2 dining rooms and 2 living rooms.
Yeah, there's, like I said, lots of additions and stuff onto the house. So this would be more of the family living room, and it's where the fireplace was. And so one night I lived out there after I had Dylan. He was just, maybe 6 to 9 months old. Anyway, you were having a rough night. You just weren't sleeping. You were really restless, kept waking up. And I was the only one home with you. And I'm not sure. I think maybe everybody else, they left on vacation or something. I can't remember. But I was in the house alone with you. And I went out to the living room, and I was sitting in the dark, and I was rocking you. And above the fireplace mantle, there was a light that pointed up. And there was a piece of artwork up there. And that light kept turning on and off and on and off. And it's I would look away from it, and then it would, turn on. And, it was just really, really creepy, and it just freaked me out. I had a lot of different creepy things and feelings in that house, but that was the one interaction that really scared me. And I ended up running into my bedroom, which was that room next to the kitchen. So it was on the older side of the house.
On the main floor.
On the main floor. Where this was occurring was the new side of the house. And I found out that not too long before that, your grandparents had taken down, there was a picture of Edward J. Thigh that used to hang above the fireplace. And they had replaced it with a different piece of art. And
it's so interesting. And all of the activity that we've experienced is always after something has been changed there.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, it's a cool property. It's a beautiful house. But you were saying that one night you were sleeping there and you had something happen, or you were hearing something.
So, yeah, no, this is when I had the baby goats there. The first night that I went and slept in what was supposed to be my room, I lasted maybe 2-3 hours, and I just felt like I kept hearing little children running around and playing and going back and forth in the hallway. And in the hallway is where the attic, the stairs come down to get up to that attic.
Okay.
And I so scared after that night that even that night I grabbed my blankets and pillows. I put the space heater in the kitchen. And I slept on the kitchen floor. I don't know why. But even every single night I was there, and Grandma worked nights, so I was there by myself. Every night I slept on the kitchen floor because I was too scared to sleep anywhere else.
Well, honestly, thinking back when you're saying that, I never had any bad feelings or uneasiness in the old side of the house. Everything that happened or feelings that I had all occurred on the newer side.
Same. That's the same thing that happened with me. Is even because that room, but that was supposed to be my room, where I heard those children running and playing,
Was the newer side.
was on the newer side. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that weird? Because usually it'd be like the older side that has more history. I never really had anything weird or uneasy happen over there. That's crazy. Well, and then you were also talking about a time that you had brought some friends out there. You were telling me this story as well. You gotta share this story. This is crazy.
So at the time, after the goats got older, I was done spending the night there. Like, if I didn't have to be there, I wasn't staying there. But my two friends at the time, Sadie and Shay, did not believe anything I was telling them about this house. So one night we went out there, and it should be noted too, before I go into this, there was a mobile home on the property, a trailer home, that was rented out to another couple.
Yep.
It was not close, but not far either. I mean, I don't know how far do you think the distance the two houses were?
Oh, probably not even. Well, I would say maybe 50.
Like a half a block?
No,
50,
not
60 feet?
even. Because they were not that far back from the driveway, and the sun porch wasn't that far back from the driveway either. So I would say maybe 50 feet apart, maybe 75.
You could probably yell front door to front door.
You probably could, yeah.
So we ended up showing up there, and when we got there, my friend Sadie was like, I'm leaving the keys in the ignition, and made it very clear that in case we run out, we don't want to drop the keys. There was a dog, Opus, that lived there.
St. Bernard's. Sweetest dog.
And it was silent. Sweetest dog. I loved Opus. But she never barked. She was silent. And very, very rarely did she bark. We ended up going in, and we walked through the old part of the house into, I guess, that first living room. I don't know. Was that the newer part of the house, right?
The first living room?
Because after the first living room, so where
after
your bedroom
the
was? After the kitchen?
Nope, that's in the old part of the house.
No. Nope. So the next room.
Oh,
so you go through that little hallway.
Yep.
So we sat down on the couch on the new part of the house. Within maybe 30 seconds, my friend Shay started running out of the house, claiming that she's being choked. At the time, I just got scared because she was running out of the house. I didn't feel nervous or anything.
Did they know about the occurrences that you had there before?
I had told them, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sure I had told them. No, I had to have told them because they didn't believe me.
Okay.
That this stuff was going on. So then I brought them to the house.
To see if anything would happen.
And so when Shay starts running out of the house, Sadie immediately follows, and I immediately follow both of them. Well, we get to the car, and the keys are not in the ignition.
What?
And the dog is standing very far from the house, just barking at the direction of the house. He's in between us. So
he's like protecting you from the house.
From the house. There we go. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
And her barking brought the attention of the neighbor, the guy that was living in the mobile home next to the renter. And he came out asking what was going on. So we explained to him what was going on. We told him that we left the keys in the car. The keys are not here. So he offered to come in and help me find the keys. So I go in with him to help find the keys. And, I explained to him, we never went upstairs. So we're looking all downstairs. We don't see him anywhere. And I remember he stood over by the stairs, and he goes, "You sure you never went upstairs?" And I'm like, "No, we never went upstairs." He points and goes, "The keys are on the edge of the railing upstairs."
My God.
Every time I get this story, I just get chicken skin. So scary.
Total goosebumps. And you guys did not go upstairs. That's the crazy thing. But
never went upstairs.
Whatever took these from, even if you did bring them into the house, what kind of energy would they have had to muster up to levitate these things upstairs?
And put them on the railing.
On the railing. And he could see them from downstairs, which is crazy.
Oh, and the reason we found out that the keys were even upstairs is the light was on upstairs.
And it was off before.
Oh
my God. So freaky.
Oh. Gosh, I just thinking about this. I hate even talking about this. It scares me so
Well, I
much.
appreciate you sharing it with us because this is great for our Halloween episode. But I never really had anything happen other than that night I was in the rocking chair. But man, the feelings that you would get, and when your grandparents had Copper, the Chesapeake, the way that he would snarl at things. I worked a lot of weird hours, and a lot of times your grandparents would babysit you guys when you were little, and I would get off work at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, have a 45-minute drive to their house, and I would pick you guys up while you were sleeping. And so I'd come out there a lot at night. The driveway was probably about 40-50 feet from the front door. And I'd have to walk up that, and then sometimes Copper would just be snarling, and I wasn't sure if it was at me or... I mean, Copper loved us. He was a very good dog, but sometimes there was things out there at night that I don't know what they were. And mind you, it's out in the country and it's very dark, and they have a lot of acreage, so there's not anything around except for a lot of old outbuildings and the old Apple store, and kind of crazy.
Very desolated.
Yeah. But I'd be curious to find out how many people actually have passed away, because I don't even know what year that house was built. So
I couldn't tell you.
Me either. I mean, like I said, it's beautiful, but it is old. Very old. But, well.
It is.
I appreciate you sharing this with us for our little.
No worries.
Sorry to give you major goosebumps before you go to bed, but. It was very fun I know that we talked about it a little bit before, but it was really fun to hear the stories and then to put the rocking chair incident together, because I actually had an occurrence when I sat in that rocking chair. And it might not even have been because of the picture being removed. It could be that I was sitting in the rocking chair. And I'm wondering if they had just recently brought it down from the attic or not. Did you ever go up into the attic?
I think maybe once or twice, just peeking up the stairs. But I always remember it was Grandma and Grandpa where I was like, no, stay away from there. It's dangerous, because if you were to fall down the stairs of the attic, you will also fall to the first floor. If you fell over that balcony.
Okay. Because it's right in the hallway, wasn't it? Right by the banister.
It's right on the hallway of, on the second floor. So if you fell on the stairs going up the attic, you're likely going to fall off the balcony of the second floor as well.
I was just curious if there was a lot of stuff up there. I'm assuming it had to be tall enough to be able to walk around and stuff up there to have
it is
the dollhouse. And you said that dollhouse wasn't even original to the house. It was Angie's, your aunt's, right?
I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure. And I do remember, actually, I have been up in the attic. I clearly remember there was like a wooden chest, but in the attic is a built-in cedar room, like a storage room that's made of cedar.
Which
I remember that very clearly now.
Which is pretty common back in the day, especially with Edward J. Thigh being out there. That doesn't surprise me, because a lot of times they would store like their fur coats and like suits and gowns and stuff in cedar closets.
Okay.
Because I know it's something with the smell of the cedar, and moths don't like cedar or something like that.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. I'll have to Google that. I know there's something with cedar closets and the wealthy.
Pest control?
Yeah.
Well, Mother, I'm happy I was able to help you out with your show.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm sure all of our listeners do too, hearing the little creepy story. But I will let you go. You have a great night, and I love you.
I love you too. Thanks again.
Yep. Thank you for being on the show and being a guest. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Are you all creeped out yet? Are you ready for some more? Of course you are. Here's Amanda from WonNothing podcast sharing her ooky spooky story. Enjoy.
Hey everyone. Well, we have another special treat for you. We have Amanda from WonNothing podcast, and she's going to come on and share a little spooky story with us as well. Amanda, why don't you give us a shout out to your show and kind of tell us what it's about?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. So excited to be here. I host WonNothing podcast. We are a very unique podcast in that every episode features a different fatality. We go in depth about who they were as a person, what they love, and why they died, and if there's anything that we can take away from that experience that we could apply to our own lives. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much what we're all about. We celebrate dark humor, very much a feel your feelings type of place.
Oh, I try to celebrate that sometimes, but Jeremy doesn't like it so much. And Jeremy's not with us on this little experience. This was kind of a project that I started, and he's been working on the evenings, and the only time I can do it is on the evenings. So we're missing Jeremy on this a little bit, but he'll get to listen and edit and enjoy it as well. So
he'll be sad he missed out.
He will, but well, for sure, he'll be, when we do our crossover in November, he'll be on that one for sure. And Amanda and I met by chance on a podcast group one day. I don't even remember what it was about, but we were commenting back and forth to each other, and it's grown into this little podcast friendship, and now I've been part of this little podcast community that I'm just loving. You guys are all so amazing, and I'm just glad that we ran into each other that day.
I know, you fit right in. You guys are just as amazing. So it's like you're the missing puzzle piece.
Oh, thank you. It's been so great. I just love listening to all of your guys' shows and how everybody collabs. It's not like, you would think it would be more like cutthroat, like everybody's out for themselves. But in this group, it is not like that. Everybody is about promoting and supporting, and everybody is so wonderful. It's just something like you don't see a lot of that nowadays in humans.
You really don't. It has grown into like a little bit of a family almost kind of dynamic. So I'm really appreciative.
Yes, me too. So I thank you for bringing me into this little family. You're like my my first friend in the family. But why don't you go ahead and share your little spooky story with us? I'm so excited.
Sure. So, I won't drag it out too long because I could go on and on. But to make it short, growing up, my parents were separated, and we have this weird custody arrangement where we would go to my biological father's for the weekends. And a lot of the time that consisted with taking us to his parents. His parents, my grandparents' house, was very much haunted. And as much as I remember from as early as I can remember, weird stuff has always happened in this house. Now, when they moved into this house, they had moved from England, and they chose this home. It was their dream home. It had the white picket fence. It had the finished basement with the fireplace. It had a bar in the basement, a pool in the backyard, just about everything they could have. So it was their, they had worked so hard for it. It was their luxury, and they really, really loved it.
Sounds
I don't
beautiful.
remember it was beautiful. Under any other circumstances, it would have been beautiful. So to kind of gain an idea of the makeup of the house, as soon as you walked in, if you looked straight, you had kitchens behind French doors. To your right was a living room. And then if you walked straight, there was a hallway that took you down to where the bedrooms were. And there was also a basement, and the entryway to the basement was in that hallway. So for whatever reason, a lot of the activity that I remember experiencing, a lot of it happened within that hallway. And we didn't really have much happen in the kitchen or the living room. Not much happened in like the bathroom or anything. But in particular, the spare bedroom at the back of the hallway and the basement seemed to be hot spots for activity. So I'm not really sure why. I have no history on the house. I don't know, if anything tragic happened there. We don't know. That didn't seem like it, but I remember being very, very young. And the first thing that I can really remember experiencing when I knew that it was something not from our world was that in the spare bedroom, there was a dimmer switch to the light. And so it was one of those round switches that you rotate left to right to make the light dimmer or brighter.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the light switch in the room. And any other time it worked as expected, as it should, as designed. But whenever my sister and I would sleep in that room, or whenever anybody would sleep in the room, the dimmer switch would go all night long, super, super bright, and then all the way to dark, and then super, super bright, all the way to dark. But the bright was like brighter than it was even really capable of doing, if that makes sense. Like
so it's like supercharged.
The capacity of the bulb never got as bright as it would unless it was like one of these episodes. So my sister and I, we were very young. We were maybe like 3 and 6 when we kind of started realizing this stuff. And we used to joke about it being the ghost because we had Casper, that movie for kids around the same time. So we didn't see it as a threatening thing. We just thought it was funny. And we would talk a lot to my grandparents about, oh, the ghost did it, or, a lot of stuff would go missing. And so we'd say the ghost took it, and they would get very upset. And they'd be like, don't say that, don't talk about it. Just basically, they were uncomfortable acknowledging that there was something happening. And so they would try to shut down any conversation about it.
Right.
And my cousins were around the same age. So all the time we would talk about this, between ourselves. And crazy things would happen, like the basement in particular. There was just this, like a room off of a room and then a bedroom off of that room. It was always super dark. It was always very, just thick feeling. Like it felt like what happens when you're standing in a line at Walmart, when you're just really, there's tons of people all around you and it's very claustrophobic. It felt like that, but you're in a room with nothing in it. So it didn't make any sense, the vibes that you would get. And then the things like the fireplace would just go out at random all the time. The electronic stuff would go wonky. They had a peanut machine that you would drop a quarter into and spin, and you'd get like a handful of peanuts at the little bar.
Mm-hmm.
And all the time it would just randomly dump peanuts on the floor with nobody having touched it. Just like weird stuff like that.
Oh, boy.
And it got kind of brushed off as just being kind of whatever excuse they could rationalize to avoid having to admit that it was something paranormal. So at one point, my grandmother's ring went missing, her wedding ring. And mind you, her and my grandfather had been married for 60 years when they passed. So that wedding ring never left her hand, and there was no reason for it to be missing. But she thought maybe it just fell off one night in bed, or maybe they were doing dishes and it came off and she didn't notice. So they scoured the house. Months went by. They could not find this ring. So they were settled to buy a new one and just kind of move past it. 3 months after this ring goes missing, it shows up at the very top of the basement steps in the carpet. And this is an area they vacuum. This is an area in a high traffic area that you're walking in every day, multiple times a day. They didn't have pets at this time. They had grandkids, but we're old enough to know. We're not like toddlers. We're old enough at this point to know. And so that was a thing that my whole family really were kind of creeped out by, because we just knew the likelihood of it having been there undetected for 3 months was impossible.
Right.
It was too high traffic of an area. So then the smells started. There was really pungent smells, mainly in the spare bedroom where we would sleep when we stayed over. And it always smelled like curdled milk. And it would come really, really, really pungent. They would tear the room. My mother and my aunt would tear the room apart, clean everything, take the bedding off, move the mattresses. There was never any reason for the odor, but it would just go on its own. And then months later, the smell would come back, and it wasn't consistent. So that was really bizarre, that it was just every now and then. The thing that really made me realize it was an actual, I don't even want to use the word spirit, but just something in a human form that wasn't human, was the night when my sister and I and my grandmother were in the television room. And mind you, in the television room, it's a very interesting setup where if you're in this room, you can see out the door. You can see the door to the bathroom and part of the hallway wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're all in there watching TV, and my grandfather gets up to use the bathroom. So he goes to the restroom. You can hear the door shut of him going, to the bathroom. And so we're all in there watching TV, my grandmother, my sister, and I. And at the same time, I just happened something caught my attention, and I looked up. And I know that my sister looked up too, because we were beside one another. So we both looked up and watched as this large black figure walked across the doorway, past the bathroom door, into the spare bedroom.
Oh, hell
So we
no.
watched it. It was taller than my grandfather. He was a shorter man, so it was much taller than him. And so at first, instantly thinking, before I could even say it, I wanted to ask, did anyone see that? But before I could even say anything, my grandmother instinctively yells out, "Joe," thinking it was my grandpa. So I know she saw it too.
Okay.
He answered from within the bathroom and he's like, I'll be right out. So he's still in the bathroom. Clearly it wasn't him that walked past. There's nobody else in the house. And when my sister and I got really excitable by this and we're like, what is that? What was it? Let's go find out. And she squashed it and she said she didn't see anything. So that leads me to believe she had seen this thing before.
Right.
Because she very instantly was like, nope, don't acknowledge it. Don't pay attention to it. But she did yell out my grandfather's name when she saw it, which is how I know that she saw it, because otherwise there's no reason to have yelled out his name. So that was the only, like, the most concrete thing that I actually saw an apparition with my eyes, and it was acknowledged by 2 other people in the same room.
Right.
So that could have been a light trick, it couldn't have been a perspective thing.
Right.
But yeah, that is definitely the most creepy thing. I later found out in more recent years, because I inherited a bunch of photographs from my grandparents when they passed. And in one of the photos, probably before I was even born, this photo was taken. And in the hallway, you can see a set of glowing eyes that's like a foot up off the ground.
Oh,
they didn't have any
no.
pets. Yeah, so I found that in the photo recently, and I was really bewildered by that just because of the placement, because it's in the hallway right up against the door where everything, like a lot of stuff happened. So definitely creepy. I've also been telling this story a lot lately. I told it on a couple other podcasts for Halloween stuff because it is like my most paranormal spooky story, and I'm not linking anything together. Correlation is not causation, but a lot of stuff in my house has been going missing lately, which I'm a little uncomfortable about because I live alone. So I'm very uncomfortable about stuff vanishing in my 700 square foot apartment where I live by myself. So I'm a little unnerved by that. I'm a very organized person by nature, so I don't misplace things often. But I'm not thinking that that's anything. I'm just simply pointing out the irony that stuff has been kind of going missing lately after I've been talking about this so much.
Yeah, no. So you'll hear this when the recording comes out and stuff, but what you were saying with that ring brought me back to the story my son shared with me last night, and he had never told me this story before. So I'm just going to do a quick little recap on his story. So
yeah,
his grandparents, my ex's parents, he spent quite a bit of time out there. They lived on a farm. It was a really old house that had been renovated multiple times. A former governor and senator lived and died in that house. And anyway, so he had some creepy things happen in the house. And he was at the state fair one year, and this lady, random lady in the crowd, came up to him and told him that she doesn't speak to ghosts, but she gets pictures and images from ghosts or people that have crossed over. And she told him that they needed to put the rocking chair and the dollhouse back.
Oh, no.
He called his grandma and asked her what she was doing, if she'd made any changes lately. 'Cause she was always making changes in the house, buying new furniture. She talked about turning it into an Airbnb. It's a beautiful old home and it's big. Many additions have been put onto it. She had just moved the rocking chair and the dollhouse.
Oh, no.
They were up in the attic and she moved them out of the attic. But
that's terrifying.
Yeah. And this just a random person to come up to him and tell him that at a public event that they don't know each other at all. But then he was telling a couple of his friends about this. So his friends wanted to go out and experience, because, he had experiences at the house, feelings more so than things that actually happen. But he had brought them into the house, and his girlfriend, not girlfriend, had said that I'm going to leave the keys in the car just in case we need to run. And so she was anticipating being scared, and she had something happen where she felt like she was being choked.
Oh my God.
There was 3 living rooms in this house, and they went into one of the living rooms. They didn't go upstairs or anything. So they ran out of the house, and the outside dog, it was the St. Bernard at the time, Opus, and Opus never barked. And Opus was barking like crazy and put herself in between the house and Dylan and his friends. And the neighbor that they had a renter on the property and he heard the commotion, was shocked at Opus barking, came out to see what was going on. And they went to the car with him and the keys were gone. They weren't in the ignition.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Right? So the renter on the property went with Dylan back into the house to try to find the keys. They looked everywhere, couldn't find them. And Mark looked up. There was 2 sets of stairs going up. In this, like, one was the old, like, servants' quarters area, and the other was, like, the new addition and the stairs up to the bedrooms and stuff. And they were on the corner of the banister, basically, like, dangling. They were just barely on the banister. They didn't go upstairs. So when you talked about the ring in the carpet, I was like, oh my God, that just totally like resonated with the story he had just told.
Yeah, that's super creepy. I would have been out of there in a split. Nope.
Yeah, that.
Especially the keys. Absolutely not.
Yeah. No, those things just, they give me I've had my own sets of experiences over the years. I grew up in a haunted house, lived in a very old house growing up. And I mean, I don't even know. I think it was 100 years old when we moved into it. Just very old and creepy and had a lot of weird stuff happen. And we also clean daycare that I have. A lot of things happen. I've gotten to the point where I think we've got an understanding with each other. The ghosts know not to scare me anymore. But one night I was vacuuming and I swore I heard Jeremy come up behind me and say something. So I turned around and I was like, hey, you want to take a break? And there was nobody there. I mean, that's how certain I heard his voice. And I turned around and he wasn't there. And I was like, huh. So I'm like, well, maybe the vacuum was making a weird noise on the carpet or something. I don't know. Tried to just shrug it off. And as I turned around, I got this cold burst of air right on the back of my neck. Like somebody was standing right behind me and just went right on the back of my neck. And I stopped. I turned the vacuum off, calmly walked upstairs. I looked at Jeremy and I was like, we need to take a break. He's like, okay, where are we going? Outside. Are you okay? I'm like, I'll tell you outside. I didn't want to say it in there,
Yeah.
But we
that's so
like Jeremy was mopping one one of the floors because we clean this daycare. And so he was mopping the floor one night and all of a sudden he turned. He felt like somebody charged him. So he felt like somebody was like charging at him. So he turned and like put the mop handle up to like defend himself. And we've had lights turn on and off on us. And I feel like somebody's like playing with my hair. But it's gotten to the point where the creepy stuff I think doesn't happen as much anymore. It's more of the playful stuff. But I mean, literally one night I'm like, that's enough. I can't do this. Because I wouldn't even go there by myself. And as a business owner, you have to go there by yourself sometimes. And
yeah.
There was so many different things like interference with our headphones. They have walkie-talkies. The walkie-talkies would go off by themselves and lights would flicker or shut off on you. And I'm like, no, this is not okay.
No, that's not okay.
No.
I did for a minute. I don't know if this is even possible, but I rescued a dog one time and weird shit happened in my house the whole time that I had that dog. And then
Really?
When I found a home for the dog, all the weird stuff went away. It was super weird. I have no idea, like, if that's a thing, if it can attach itself to a dog. But the second I brought that dog into my house, I came home one day and my front door was wide open. I was freaking out because I had cats that wanted to go outside all the time.
Right.
And I came home and all of them were in the living room corner, like sitting together.
Oh, I would suppose it could be possible because they can attach to inanimate objects.
Yeah.
And people, so why couldn't they attach to a pet?
Yeah, that was super weird, and a lot of weird stuff happened in that house. And then we would hear footsteps a lot, and my friend, she stayed with me so much that she basically lived there with me. She always hung out, and then we went and got the reason we even got that dog is we were going out to a town about an hour and a half away to pick up a mutual friend to bring her to hang out with us for a little while.
Okay.
So that's when we found that dog. And so she was staying with us for that couple weeks when we were all there. And we were all convinced, like within a week, we're like, there's something going on because you'd hear footsteps, people walking, and there's nobody in the house. And the only thing upstairs was my bedroom.
Ooh.
And so we would talk about it with my friend's mom, and she'd like brush us off. She was very skeptical. She's like, oh my gosh, it's probably just something in the roof or maybe of rats or something. She's trying to make all these, rational reasons for why we'd hear all that. And then she had come over one day. We were all standing in my kitchen, and mid-conversation, you just hear like stomp, 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 like people's feet, and you can look up and you can tell where they are. They start above you and then they move away.
Right.
And that's how much you can tell. And so she's like, who's here with you guys? And we're like, nobody. That's what we're telling you.
Oh.
And so she didn't believe us. She immediately went upstairs. She walked around. There was nobody up there, and she never came over again. She's like, I'm not coming back over there.
Well, Jeremy's a huge skeptic. It's like, even though he's had things happen to him at the daycare, he tries to, explain it away. And, like he'll come down. Were you upstairs playing with the lights? No, I've been down here, or just other things too. I don't remember. He came down and asked me something else once. And I'm like, don't tell me what happened until after we leave, because then I'm going to be on high alert. But my daughter, my youngest, she's 19. She was cleaning for us over the summer and stuff while she was waiting to go off to college. And she was having all these experiences there too. And she actually brought a friend of hers and brought a pendulum.
Oh.
Yeah, and we're like trying to communicate with it. And they communicated with, she said there's like 4 different, from what she got out of this thing as a total amateur, that there was 4 different spirits. But the one, somehow she got the name Carlton, and that he was the same age as her when he died. And she started doing all of this research. She actually found the person, but I don't know how. The place used to be a clinic before it was a daycare, but when this guy passed away, it was in the 30s. And there wasn't a clinic. There wasn't anything there where the building stands now in the 30s. But she literally found I'd have to have her tell me the story again. But she gave me all the paperwork. She found the guy's name, what he died of, how old he was. They found his grave. And I'm like, I don't know how you got all this information out of just doing this little session or whatever. But the craziest thing, they were trying to record on their phone to see if they could get any EVPs or anything. And her friend went to put her phone in her pocket, and they were done recording. They shut it off. They thought they did. And later she found that there was another recording. So either she bumped something when she put it in her pocket or something turned it on. But you hear this voice. It's like you hear muffled talking of them, my daughter and her friend. And then you can hear like the phone rustling in the pocket. And then clear as day, you hear, hey. I'm like, when she said that to me, shivers, like hair standing up in the back. I'm like, I'm not going to want to go there. Quit trying to do stuff there, because you're going to stir it up. Like, just leave it be. I love things haunted. I love things ghostly. I love the stories. I love, talking about it. But I hate being scared, which is totally weird.
I like being scared if I do it to myself. Like if I play a scary movie at night and do it to myself. But the other night, for whatever reason, I was like getting under my bed for something, and my phone charger, I think, dropped under there. And I have this thing, because I've watched horror movies my whole life, about under the bed being a very characteristically scary place.
Yeah.
And so I crawl under there. I work on my nerve, and I crawl under my bed, and I finally get my charger, and I'm like, I don't know if you do this, but my brain always does the what if something scary happened right now to me all the time. Yeah. And so I'm like, what if you just turned around and there was a face next to you? And I'm like, why would I do that to myself? So I turned around to tell my brain there's nothing there, and to alleviate that immediate, stress that just came up. And I look over and I'm like, okay, there's nothing there. And I turn back around, and my MFing cat has crawled in beside me.
Oh, no.
I almost took my whole bed down trying to get out from underneath that thing.
I'm sure. Well, here's not a scary thing, but a funny thing. We have 2 dogs. They're siblings. They're both Alapaha Blue Blood Bulldogs, which is just kind of a larger version of an English bulldog. And so I wake up this morning. Maisie's sleeping next to me. Jeremy was out editing. He's on an opposite, shift schedule than I am right now. And so Jeremy's in the garage editing, and I'm like looking all over the house, and our house isn't that big. I can't find Harley anywhere. We have all the doors shut, our laundry room doors shut, the spare bedroom door shut, the game room door shut. So I have living room, kitchen, my bedroom, and my bathroom, and the other bathroom. That's it to check. He's nowhere. And I call for him. He's not coming. And I'm like, where the hell is Harley? And so I'm like, Harley, I'm like, you want a treat? And then I thought I heard like something in my bedroom. I go in there. He's not in there. So underneath, like we have our bed frame is the side rails are so low that they can't fit under there. Well, okay. He was under there, but I was like, what the hell? I remembered I put my bed in 0G last night because it's an adjustable bed.
Oh.
When I went into 0G and he went under the bed. And so when I was done watching TV and went to sleep, I put the bed down. He was stuck under there. Wasn't making a peep. Wasn't doing anything. I let him out. No, he just...
Survival skills are 0.
And he comes out, you know how dogs do that where they curl themselves into that little C formation? And he's just like, oh, mom, thank you. I'm like, dude, no noises, no whimpering, no barking. It was so funny. But, well, anyway, I suppose we should probably wrap up so you can get to the rest of your night and get to eat your yummy home cooking that you spent all day working on.
No, I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Hopefully my efforts are
I'm sure it'll be a delicious. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on and sharing your stories. And it was so awesome to actually talk to you on the phone instead of, on the keyboard.
I'm so excited and I can't wait. And we're teaming up on a lot of things here coming up. So I'm really excited to talk more with you.
I am too. And we got we have a lot of things coming up. It's exciting. I'm really excited for the next month. There's going to be a lot of good crossovers, a lot of great content, and it's going to be fun. All right. Well,
I'm here for it.
Me too. Well, you have a great night. And again, thank you for, doing this on such short notice.
No, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. It's so awesome. And I'm excited to hear it all put together.
And everybody go check out WonNothing podcast. It's definitely worth the listen. I love your show.
Thank you. WON for people searching it too. I know it gets tricky, but
yeah. All right. Well, have a good night. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
All right, Conundrum Crew. We didn't want to leave you hanging, so we have one last creepy story to prevent you from sleeping tonight. Here is Courtney from Hauntscast telling her bone-chilling encounters.
All right, guys, we have another special guest for you. We have Courtney from Hauntscast. Hey, Courtney, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to hear your stories, and we've actually been on the phone for a while until we hit record. Yeah. Catching up on some ghosty stuff, but
yeah, I feel like we've shared like a lot of just like other like paranormal updates and stuff over the last like hour or so, but I have been keeping my cards close to the chest for these other stories that I have for you, and I'm excited to share them with you. I think you're going to get a kick out of them.
I am so excited. I've watched you and Farah on your collabs and heard some of your other stories, so I think it's going to be some good ones. But why don't you give us a quick shout out about your show and the name, what it's all about?
Yeah. So Haunts Podcast or Hauntscast on social media, it's a narrative style podcast. So more, not necessarily conversational back and forth like you and Jeremy have. It's very much like a scripted kind of story about various different haunted locations and urban legends from around the world. I try to the best of my ability to, take a skeptical look at all of these different hauntings that I'm talking about. But at the same time, I've also been doing paranormal research to some degree for coming up on 9 years now. It's been about 9 years since I went on this journey or began this journey. So through the skepticism that I have for the stories that I'm telling and sharing, I also look at it from the point of view of, various different theories in paranormal research and parapsychology. So it's an even mix of, looking at things and trying to debunk them, but also giving credit where credit's due and explaining the story from kind of an analytical and hopefully objective space, if that makes sense. We release episodes once a week, overnight on Sunday nights. And you can find us on pretty much every platform that there is. The easiest one's probably Apple Podcasts, I'm not going to lie. If you just type in Haunts, it's going to be one of the first ones. And yeah, you can also follow me on social media at Hauntscast. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and for the time being, TikTok until it gets potentially taken away because I live in Montana. But yeah, that's my little spiel about that.
TikTok may be taken away?
Yeah, so they're doing a weird thing in the state of Montana where they're, I guess, banning it. I don't understand fully the ins and outs of it, but my day job per se is in social media, so I've been paying close attention to that issue. And I think that the main issue is they're not going to have it available on the app stores to purchase. But if you already have it, I'm under the impression that you can still use it, but it might be limited. And so, to be honest, I just haven't put in a whole lot of hope there because obviously if it's going to get to the point where I can't use it anymore, I'd rather interact with you guys on various social media accounts. But there are some stuff there. I do have a good time using the green screen effect. So if you want to check it out while the content's there, go for it.
Yeah, we haven't gotten, Jeremy wants to get into TikTok. I haven't got into it much.
It's so fun. It's so fun.
Actually, I think we just finally found the cameras that we're going to use to start doing video recording. And I'm so scared. I'm like, I don't want to have to worry about how I sound and what kind of facial expressions I'm making at the same time.
Yeah, I feel that. But it's a great, I just think it's a great platform. Even just if you are kind of scrolling, we talked before we started recording this about, our mixed feelings about social media, let's say. But one of the ones that I just enjoy as a platform to consume content is TikTok. And I think they have a lot of really fun features in the sense of being able to use the green screen effect or being able to have copyrighted material in it without getting, I think they have special permissions in place to where it links back to the original creator in a specific way to where it's not,
that's nice. So you don't
infringing
have
on copyrights.
Right.
So so you don't have to worry about it. As long as you're doing everything in app, you should be fine. Of course, that presents the potential for your own stuff to get used by other creators, but it's a fun app just in general to be able to, scroll through and play with. But I'm not sure what the future holds for it, because I think once one state bans it, I'm sure there will be others to follow, whether we like it or not. So.
Definitely. I know I get stuck in the Facebook Reels thing. I have TikTok.
Yeah, same thing.
I'll use it more for just watching. I haven't created any videos or anything myself yet. But yeah, there's so many different things out there. I mean, half the time it's you'll start one reel, you'll click on it, and it's oh, that's kind of cool. And then you're half an hour
and then
later.
You keep scrolling.
Yes.
Yeah. That's where the downfall is. I'm I really should be doing something a little more productive with my time. Because same thing if you're on Instagram or YouTube Shorts, it's the short form content. You're oh, I can just scroll for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're an hour deep in this very strange rabbit hole that you've fallen down. But
yes. And
again, if you guys want to check out the content while it's there,
well,
go for it.
For YouTube, all we do right now, our trailer that we have for YouTube, we actually have different images changing and stuff on there. But other than for our podcast, we just have the same image that's on the screen the whole time. So if people like to listen on YouTube, they can. But he's it gives us an opportunity for people to be able to feel like they get to know us too,
Right. Right. It's just another way to reach people that may not have otherwise, because we all have our own favorite, I think, platforms to use.
Definitely.
So, I mean, he's right for sure.
He's way more into it than I am. So
yeah.
But yeah, we were researching cameras and stuff the other day, and I don't remember what they're called, but they're AI powered cameras.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie, that's a little scary.
But yeah, it follows you. So it's on like, what do they call it? Not a dongle, but
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Kind of like I also don't know the word for it, but it's almost like a pivot kind of.
yeah. So
yeah.
a lot of vloggers use that style of camera when they're out vlogging. And this one actually has hand controls. So you can make different motions with your hands, like zoom in, zoom out. It'll follow you, and then it has like present mode. And so like, let's say
that's so cool, but that's so scary.
It is. And then like it has a desk mode. So the camera will point down to your desk. So if you have a document or something that you want to share. So I think it's more for like people who are doing like presentations for work and stuff.
No, I mean, I feel like people are people can get on that definitely for like our purposes.
Oh, for sure.
But at the same time, like, the fact that it can like track you, I swear to God, I don't know if you guys know that movie, Smart House. It came out in like the 90s or something on Disney Channel. But it like took over, right? They took over their lives essentially. I'm like, this is what it's coming to. No, I mean, we all use AI, unfortunately, at this point. And I think, that's just a reality we're going to have to deal with. But every time it comes up and I learn something new, like a new development in the world of AI, I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to mentally wrap my head around that.
Well, what we were talking about before, being in the IT world, I've like Alexified our house.
Right.
And I have like in our bedroom, I'll say, I'll walk in, I'll say good morning, it turns the lights on, say good night, it turns the lights off. And I've set up different, like our guest room with a command. And I've gotten to the point where I've forgotten which commands that I set up. But one day we put smart bulbs in the garage because when we have our Halloween party and our New Year's Eve party and stuff like that, I changed the color of the bulbs with the app instead of having to actually physically change the bulbs.
Like physically change it. That's nice.
Well, we ended up taking them out. Jeremy put different lights in. He put can lights in now instead. But at one point, he's like, can we please take the smart bulbs out of the garage? Because if you're not here and something happens, I have no lights in the garage because I had the app on my phone.
Oh my God, that's so true. Right.
They were powered by her, but it was a different app that you set up to install. And I was the only one that had the app on my phone.
Oh no. So he's like walking around in the dark. It's my worst fear. Just stuck in the dark. There's nothing you can do.
Or some of them, when they disconnect, they'll flash. They just keep flashing.
Oh.
So that was another
thing.
That's even
worse.
Right? So you're like stuck in a strobe light.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, maybe.
See, the flaws in technology, even though I shouldn't say that because eventually they're going to become a lot smarter.
Oh, definitely.
Anyways.
Exactly. But anyway, let's get into your stories. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So I have a few smaller stories. I was telling you about this when we first got on our call that to me go along the same theme. They're all from like my childhood, if that makes sense. Okay. So in between, I'd say maybe like 10 to let's say like 17, 18.
Okay.
I mean, like I said earlier, I've been doing this for quite a while and in a more like serious sense. But I didn't pick up like paranormal research in the sense of like seriously doing it until I was in college. So all of these stories are from when I had at least some sort of like passing curiosity or, skeptical interest in the paranormal. But for the most part, these are just experiences that kind of scared the crap out of me before I truly understood like what was going on. Now, I think in my adult life and after I've gained a little bit more experience in this area, they probably wouldn't seem as frightening. But when you're in it in that moment, it definitely does. And I will say, you'll see in one of them, my dad, he and I both believe in the paranormal to the same degree, but he's definitely a little bit more fearful of it.
Okay.
And on one of these occasions, he was like, stop talking, you're freaking me out. I don't want to have anything to do with this. So I'm going to try to do this the best I can in the chronological order.
Okay.
Obviously, this happened like decades ago, so there's going to be, possibly some discrepancies in terms of timelines. But the first one happened, I want to say like maybe when I was like around 10 to 11, maybe 12 years old. I was still living at like my first childhood homes. I like to think of my childhood in two separate chapters. The first one, when up until I was 15-ish, I was living in Augusta with my parents in our first like family home. And then the other half, when I was like in high school and stuff like that, we moved to a town just outside of Atlanta. And that's kind of where both of these stories will take place, or all of these stories will take place. So the first one, we were living in Augusta. And like I said, I had to have been around like 10 or 12. And I remember I'd come home from school. It was a weekend. And I've always been kind of a nap person. So after like a long week, I don't have to do any homework. As long as a week that a 10-year-old can have, I like decided to take a nap on this particular day. So I went up to my like childhood bedroom, and I had the habit of turning on the TV every time that like I fell asleep. It's obviously not very good sleep hygiene, but when I was younger, that was just something that I did. So I turned on the TV and I got in bed. And I hadn't like completely dozed off yet, but I was like, kind of half paying attention to the TV, half trying to like relax and, fall asleep. And on one of the like times when I opened my eyes to look at the TV, I saw this like dark cloaked figure in front of me. And at first, which is what you guys are probably thinking, I'm like, oh, I must be dreaming this, or, looking back at it now as an adult, I'm like, maybe this is sleep paralysis, except I can move.
Okay.
And when like you see it, obviously it jolts you out of any sort of state of relaxation that you might be in. So I like wake up and I look at it and it's still there. It's just like this like dark, the best way I can describe it, not to bring this back to a place of Harry Potter, but the best way I can describe it is like a small Dementor.
Okay.
Just like a cloaked figure, not really any sort of like facial features. It kind of had some places where eyes should be, a place where a mouth should be, but not that they were an actual mouth or actual eyes or anything like that. And I remember like staring at it for a second and then kind of getting my wits together and literally running through whatever this thing was, if there was anything there to begin with. And like, I can't remember if there was like, a chill or anything like that. I don't want to say that that's the case, but I just remember that I literally shot up out of my bed and ran directly through it because it was in between myself where my bed was and the door. So I ran downstairs. I'm like freaking out. And this is when my dad is like, what are you talking about? And poor guy, I'm like, you have to go up there. Like something is in my room.
He's like, hell
and
no.
He's like, no, you were dreaming. Yeah, he's like, no, you're dreaming. Like, I don't want to deal with that because, I mean, obviously, maybe not so obviously, but people around that age have a lower spiritual ego. And if you don't know what that is, it basically means that like you're more open to the paranormal and the other side because you don't necessarily know better. They say that a lot for like babies, but it happens to kids throughout their adolescence. So he was like really freaking out because he's like, okay, like you probably can see something, but I'm not going to be able to see if I go up there, which leaves me defenseless. So he goes up there. And of course he doesn't see anything, but poor guy, he was like really stressed out and comes back down. He's like, do not ever do anything like that again. That was like genuinely terrifying. And of course now is like the rest of my childhood, poor guy, like, and even like before that, like when I was even younger and just like had a bad dream, he was always very much like, don't tell me about it. I don't want to know about it. Like even if I went in there in the middle of the night, like into my parents' room for comfort, as most kids do, I think that moment really freaked him out to the point where he's like, nope, if you have a bad dream and you need something, you better go to your mom. Like, she doesn't believe in this. I do. I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Well, and I'm sure he saw the pure fear that you had coming down there. So I'm sure that probably jolted him even more.
Right. And poor guy, like he never has been one to discredit me when I've had like some sort of an experience. Like I firmly believe that he believed me. And he has, anytime that I have told him like, oh, I've had this experience, even now at like nearly 30 years old, he like takes into consideration that what I'm saying is true. Cause he's like, you're not going to tell me something just to mess with me because you know how freaked out I get by it.
He seems like one that believes, kind of like I am. I believe, but I don't want to experience necessarily.
Right.
I mean, if I'm going out, if I'm trying to, like if we go out ghost hunting, then it's a little bit different. But I don't want something just out of the blue, spooky.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I spoke about this, a little bit of a segue, but I spoke about this on an episode a few weeks back. I was talking about the Stanley Hotel, and I stayed there, a couple years ago after a friend's wedding. She got married like not far. Yeah, she got married not far away from there. And my dad, being, a loving and supportive father. When I was a kid and first started like getting into like, because I've always loved like horror movies and stuff like that. And I've read the book, like The Shining, countless times. So when I was younger, he's always like, we should go and stay at the Stanley. And I took that to heart. So when the opportunity arose, he was like, okay, I guess like we have to. I'm terrified. But like, yeah, like when I had that experience there, he couldn't believe it. But he was like seeing lights turning on and off in the window. And he was so freaked out that he like served his own sort of justice and kind of had me go and investigate on my own, which I was already one step ahead of him. But
yeah, you and your mom go up or something and he stayed down.
Yeah. So yeah, for your listeners, in case you haven't like, come across this episode or heard of my show, we were staying at the Stanley and I was downstairs on the patio and we just had ordered drinks to have like a pre-dinner cocktail. None of us had been drinking up until that point and our drinks weren't even there yet. We literally just placed the order. And he started looking up at like the 4th floor, which is the one that's supposed to be the most haunted in that hotel. And he's like, hey, like that light is going on and off. Is that your room? And I'm like, yeah, it is. So, he's like, no, there's got to be somebody in there. They're like, that can't be your room. And if it is, then like, a hotel staff member is like having a go with you. Like, that can't be real. So my mom and I go upstairs to check it out. And by the time that we'd gotten up there, it had stopped. But he like called me and told me, like it stopped literally as you were walking in the room. No. And I think that for him was his first like real experience. Everything else he had experienced secondhand, but like he watched it for probably a good 5 minutes because I didn't want to get in the elevator just because number one, it was really crowded. Number two, it's very old and I just didn't want to risk it. So we walked all the way up the stairs. So it had to have been like, coming up on 5 minutes. And he was like, I have no way to explain that. I don't want to explain that. I don't want to be here anymore. Well, so that's kind of a tidbit about my dad. He's never discredited me and he's encouraged it no matter how much it freaked him out. So I think I kind of owe my interest in this area to him to some degree.
Definitely.
Even though he probably despises me for it, but at least he's a good dad. But.
He's like, oh boy, I opened you up too much to it.
Yeah, he's like, okay, she's expressing some interest in like, horror movies. Let's, nurture that and bond. Because he does like horror movies, ones that aren't real. But when it comes to real, like actual like hauntings, he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. But I think his effort to bond with me when it comes to like, let's watch this scary movie together turned into let's go hunt ghosts together. And he just doesn't want anything to do with it. But
that's funny.
So yeah. So that was the incident in my like first childhood bedroom. That was like, I don't want to say that was my first paranormal experience because to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if that's the case. But that's like one of the first ones that stuck with me.
That's imprinted
that I can still remember
brain.
now. Yeah. And it's been like nearly 20 years since that happened. But like it was that jarring. And to this day, it's like, it's not the only thing that I've seen, like only shadow figure per se, but it was definitely the most tangible. And I was so young. It's just something that I don't think I'll ever be able to forget.
Definitely not.
Yeah. But let's fast forward to, a couple years. We had moved from that house in Augusta to the one that's, suburban Atlanta area. And this was like around the time that I was experiencing what can only be described as like poltergeist-like activity, which makes sense given the age that I was. I was around 15, 16
Preteen,
when this occurred. Yeah. So like, I don't know if you know much about poltergeist, but they say it's like possible that it's kinetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not entirely sure I agree with it.
Yeah.
But
I've had discussions with people about it because there's a friend of mine used to think that poltergeist just meant it was moving around. And I'm like, no, poltergeist is usually something that somebody in the house could be
is causing.
Right.
I've heard mixed theories about it. And again, this is something that I spoke on recently, but like on the show. But to me, it's either going to be one of two things, and I have mixed feelings towards both of these theories, but one of them is obviously like psychokinesis, typically surrounding somebody around that age, like 15, early teen years, when you're going through puberty and you're facing a lot of these changes. Sometimes that emotional stress can manifest in a physical way on the environment, even though you have no control over it. And then there's the other side of that, which just some of my own like personal experiences past this point. Now as an adult, I still encounter this sort of activity from time to time. And I don't think that I am at that like stress level or emotional level as I was when I was a teen. So unless like something else is going on, I just don't know if poltergeists are necessarily psychokinesis, but it is an interesting take. And I think that is like the main kind of understanding of it, or like the leading theory when it comes to poltergeist activity. But I'll step off that soapbox and just like kind of explain what was happening to me around this time. So again, this had to do with my bedroom. I wasn't asleep at this point in time. I remember that I was like reading maybe. I wasn't watching TV at this time or anything like that. I was fully awake. So I had to have been like reading, or maybe I was doing homework. I can't remember the specifics, but my bed started shaking, which if you know anything about like paranormal activity or like demonic stuff, not that this was necessarily a demon, but it's not a good sign. And I sat there for a minute and I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. But there was a part of me that for whatever reason had tricked my mind into thinking that it was maybe the air conditioning cutting on, because there was a vent that like came down like right above my bed, if that makes sense.
You were trying to rationalize the movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, and then I didn't think that was possible just because it's like, it's a queen size bed and like the air conditioning isn't going to make that rattle to that degree. Like it was like, you know, those beds like back in the 80s at like hotels and stuff where you could put a quarter in and it would like vibrate. It was like that. Yeah. It was like,
it was
that
moving
aggressive.
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So it stopped after a while and I went back to what I was doing. And mind you, this must have been like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I was still up, but my parents had gone to sleep. So whatever I was doing, I had gotten back to it after it stopped, because I'm like, okay, well, like that was like creepy, but it was probably the air conditioning or something like that. A little while later, it happens again and I wait for it to stop. And this time it doesn't. So I'm like, okay, I have to leave. Like, I don't want to be in this room anymore. But at the same time, like I said earlier, my dad really doesn't like want to know about this. And for that matter, at 15, 16 years old, I'm way too old to go into my parents' room and be like, hey, I'm having a nightmare of some sorts, even though I'm wide awake. Like, I'm coming in. So I call my mom on my cell phone and she like answers like in a panic, as like most moms would when your child is calling you
right
in the middle of the night, even if she is right down the hall. And I'm like, hey, don't tell dad, but come in here, like come in my room. I like there's something happening and I need somebody to see this. So she comes in. And it's like shaking. So I'm not, you know, the only one seeing this. And I'm asking her, like, do you see what's happening to my bed? Because I feel like I'm like losing it a little bit. Yeah. Like this shouldn't be happening. And she's like, no, it's like that is vibrating. And she goes, is somebody, you know, using the garage door? Because my bedroom was like the loft above the garage. So she and I go downstairs to look and see. And like, obviously we had an alarm in this house and no one was using the garage door. And on top of that, it was just the bed. It wasn't like the rest of the room.
Right.
And when you have a room that's above a garage, for those of you who don't know, I guess, it will kind of vibrate the whole thing. Like you can't be in any one part of it and not feel the garage door opening. It's not annoying by any means or like physically distressing, but like it's apparent. And this was much more aggressive and it was only my bed. So we go back up and she's like, I'm just going to like stay in here with you and like see if maybe we can like figure it out, because at that point it had stopped.
Okay.
So she and I stayed in there and it happened a couple more times and we couldn't figure out what it was, but it scared her enough to the point where she went to the church the following day and like got one of those like little bottles of holy water. I grew up Catholic, so this is very much like she was like, we need to get the church involved if this thing has the ability to like move the bed.
We've all seen The Exorcist.
Yeah, I think that's like where her mind went, or like maybe like Poltergeist or something like that. It like the movie Poltergeist, it really freaked her out. And she's even more skeptical than I am. Not that I'm like a huge skeptic, but like, you know, she and I both were like, I have no words for what this could be. So she went to the church in local parish and got just a little bottle of holy water from the font and then came back. And she had this crucifix that had basically a holy water fountain like right in it that you could put water from, that you take home from your local church to keep in your room. So she brought that and put it in my room and then hung another one in there. And it never happened again. But one thing that I always thought was kind of interesting about it, looking back now, is that the bed faced a mirror. And I'm not totally into like feng shui and stuff, but I know that mirrors act as obviously portals. And I want to say that you're not supposed to, don't quote me on this, but I want to say that you're not supposed to have your bed facing that, nor are you supposed to have it facing a window because it invites things in.
I've heard
to you while you're sleeping.
I've heard that.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like it never happened when she, like again, after she put the holy water and the crucifix and stuff in there. But it's just interesting that like that's what it took. And maybe something weird was just happening with the house, or, I truly have no explanation for it. So I guess if you guys have other theories for what it could be, feel free to message me and let me know. But now,
I've heard
I
of
don't
people
know what
like
that was.
waking up. Like I've had that happen when I was growing up. Like I'd wake up to the bed vibrating, but usually it would stop. But being awake and physically having somebody else, right? And I think,
and like that was the thing too. I didn't want to leave while it was happening, even though I was like terrified, because I was like, if it stops, am I going to like physically get them? It's like, it's going to stop and then they're not going to believe me. And it's amazing to me that it even continued after she came in the room.
Right. And I think furniture manufacturers need to rethink putting mirrors on all of these dressers.
Right. Because it's like, that was my sliding closet door. Like, they've since changed it. I'm not sure if that's why. I will say it was kind of hideous, but whoever lived there before us put a bunch of stickers all over it. So when I moved out, my mom was like, we got to get rid of this thing. But yeah, like that, the mirror in there is no more. And it hasn't obviously happened again. But to this day, she and I are like, I don't know what could have caused that. And I don't think she's ever told my dad that it happened, because it would have given him
major anxiety
about that room. He's like, yeah, we got to move. Because he's always said, like, if the house tells him to get out, he doesn't care. He's sleeping the same day.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. So, and then this last one, I feel like my dad has just been surrounded by paranormal activity between like me and my grandma, who this next story is about. She was like full Japanese. She moved over here like to the United States after the Second World War.
Okay.
And obviously the Japanese people are very, very spiritual, and they have a lot of superstitions when it comes to the paranormal.
Definitely.
And I think it's because they have such a profound, or honestly, Asian cultures in general have like a very profound like respect for ancestors that they have in the past. And like, I will say this might be a little sad, but my grandma, when she was getting closer to her passing, she had a lot of weird, what me and my mom and my dad too can only describe as paranormal activity. We genuinely think she was seeing dead people in our house. And like, we couldn't see it, obviously, because we're not at that level of, let's say, spiritual maturity as she was at the time. So she had a lot of like strange things to say when we were towards like the last couple of years of her life. The first one of my uncles, sadly, he passed away as well. And she like knew, and she was still cognizant at this time, but like, unfortunately, her dementia was this is when it started to onset. So maybe this was all like dementia sort of hallucinations. I hate to put it that way, but just to give the skeptic side of the argument, this is what I've heard. But she, at one point after he passed away, not long after, she and my mom were eating lunch, and like obviously in the kitchen, and she just like finishes eating. She puts her fork down and looks at my mom, and she goes, okay, what do we do now? And my mom, thinking logically, is like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to go watch TV? Or I can help you go downstairs and you can sew some stuff. She was she was a seamstress when she was younger. So as she got older, she still enjoyed that hobby. So she was like offering, activities to do, like, let's go watch TV, or do you want to like maybe go sit outside for a little while? Do you want to go downstairs and sew? Like, what do you want to do? And my grandma cuts her off and she's like, no, what are we going to do with the body?
What?
And my mom's like, what body are you talking about? And she goes, And my mom's like, no, I don't. And then she just kind of like looks at her, gets up, and she's like, I'm going to go in here and like watch TV. And my mom's like, okay, you do that because you're freaking me out. And then not long after that, this happened over the course of, let's say, several months. And then it stopped. And then as she, got closer to her time, she saw things a bit more, but we weren't sure, what was causing that. This was still while she was, with us for like the most part, if that makes sense mentally. So I'd say maybe like a few months later, she is sitting in her sitting area. We had like the main like living space. downstairs, but there was another like wing to her house where there was a mother-in-law suite, and then across the hall from that was like a little sitting area that she used to like watch TV and just like relax and stuff if she didn't want to be around my mom and I watching whatever it is that we're watching. And she's sitting in there, and my mom's in there like kind of talking to her, and I come in a short while later and we're just, you know, watching a baseball game. She was a big Braves fan, so she was watching that, and then she's like kind of like not really paying attention to it after some time, and she's kind of like laughing to herself, and my mom and I are like, what are you doing? And she all of a sudden stops like giggling to herself and looks at us, and she goes, where did they go? And we're like, Taki, we're like, we called her Taki. Who are you talking about? And she goes, the little boys that were just playing there.
Oh, hell no.
And my mom's like, there were no little boys playing there but me. Because at this point, I will say this is kind of getting into the early stages of my interest in paranormal research. I wouldn't say that like I was fully understanding, but I did kind of want to know more at that time about like just this field in general. So I ended up asking her like, what did they look like? And she was like, oh, like they're younger, 2 little boys, had like bowl haircuts. And she described them specifically as being Japanese, which in my mind kind of translated like maybe she saw somebody whom we're related to. So like maybe, I don't know, like she seemed to be like very like adamant of like, this is what they look like. But yeah, after that, she just kind of went about her business. Like it wasn't any big deal. Meanwhile, my mom and I are like, what is she seeing? Like this is the second time in the last couple of months that she said some just like out of pocket,
Totally
borderline
off the
creepy
wall.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're like, okay, like that was strange. But again, not early onset, but just in the beginning stages of dementia. So maybe, sadly, to think of it this way, maybe, you know, there's nothing for us to worry about. But fast forward to Christmas of around, maybe it was that year, or maybe it was the year following. I think it was that year, but I can't say for certain. We used to host like the entirety of our extended family at my mom and dad's house when I was growing up, just because it was a centralized point for people who lived in various regions, like reaches of the Southeast. So people were coming from South Carolina, Tennessee, people coming from Florida, stuff like that. So we had everybody there, and everybody was like staying in our house. And my grandma pulls my mom aside and is like, hey, where did everybody go? And my mom's like, no one's left, Taki, like everybody's still here. And my grandma goes on to explain, no, like there were, again, she described them as Japanese people, but they were young women this time that were sitting in the living, like in her sitting area with her. And she, I guess, came to or turned around or whatever you want to call it and realized that they were no longer there. And that's when she gets up and comes into the living room where everybody else is and starts asking like where her friends had gone. Where did everybody go? And at that point, my mom was like, okay, Courtney, you deal with this since this is your area of expertise. So I had to like, you know, again, kind of like, you know, like, I don't know where they went. Like, I'm sure they'll be back. Do you want to come watch TV with us, or can I help you get back into your sitting area? Because keep in mind, she was not in the best health.
Right.
But yeah, it was like over the course of like that year or so, she just would come to us and basically tell us about people that she was sure she could see, but like none of us could. And obviously my dad was just like not having it. So it was really me and my mom trying to like figure it out for her and explain, you might be seeing somebody from the other side, because she also believed in ghosts and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously my childhood and my grandma's latter years were a bit more paranormally charged. Hopefully you get a kick out of those. I thought they were just like fun, kind of random stories that I haven't been able to share anywhere. Yeah, my family has a lot of weird experiences over the years.
Well, and it's funny, like a couple of the things that you were talking about with your grandma's story resonated. My mom passed from leukemia when she was 32.
Oh,
I was
I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. I was like 14 or 15 when she passed. I can't remember exactly. One time we were sitting in the kitchen, and mind you, at that point, she was on quite a bit. I think at that point she was on morphine, hit the button type thing.
Yeah.
But so she was in her wheelchair in the kitchen, and we were doing dishes, and all of a sudden she's like looking at her hand. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, what are you looking at? She's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, what are you seeing? She's like, you don't see all the little creatures? And I was like,
oh my God, I would have freaked out.
What? She's like, they're on my hand. You don't see them? No. no, I don't, you know.
Yeah,
But
see, it's stuff like that.
And I don't know if it was
I don't know, that's creepy.
hallucination from the medication or...
Right.
But it was like, she just looked at me like, they're there, you don't see them? And I'm like...
Yeah, and it's very matter of fact.
Right. So when you were saying,
Right.
there was a specific set of words that you said. I can't pinpoint what it was right now, but when you said that was how your grandmother said it, was exactly how my mom said it. And I was just like...
Right.
I was like, oh my gosh. But
Like, you can't see them. Like, it's right there. Like, just very matter of fact, very
Right.
calm. It's like, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about the spiritual ego. When you're a young kid, you can't differentiate between living person and a spirit. You don't have the full understanding of what a spirit is. Like, you
Right.
don't understand the concept of mortality. So how can you understand the concept of paranormal activity in the spiritual plane? Same thing can kind of be said for older individuals, unfortunately. I don't want to say it like that, but for lack of better phrasing, when you kind of sort of go back in terms of your capabilities, in terms of, you know, mobility and stuff like that, sometimes it can be easy to fall back into those childlike way of looking at the world. And I think that was what was happening. Like, to her, these were real, I mean, and I'm sure they were real people, but like living people, but they weren't. And she was
Right.
getting kind of a glimpse into the other side of the veil.
Right.
Mainly because she's closer to it and her mind is kind of, I forget the word, regenerating back. Is that the word, phrasing I'm looking for?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, like she was going back to that state of her spiritual ego was a lot lower, like that of a child. Not that she was any less intelligent, because she was a very smart woman up until the end.
Right.
But the way that her mind was operating was in a higher spiritual state than, like, say, mine was at 17.
Oh, definitely.
So I couldn't see them and she could. My mom couldn't see them, but she could. And I think that's true for like a lot of people. Like, you hear those stories about people who are, you know, in the hospital and they like maybe have had like a near-death experience or something like that, and they can see people in their room, like they're, you know, next of kin,
can't
per
see,
se,
right?
Can't see, and they're explaining it to people. And like, that's comforting in the sense of maybe you're not alone when you pass on. Like, there's somebody to help usher you to the other side.
Definitely.
But also for the living and the ones who stay here after you're gone, it can be quite eerie to hear those stories listening back. Yeah.
So my grandma also suffers from Alzheimer's, and it got to the point where right now my aunt had to put her into a assisted living memory care. So she still has her own apartment, but it's in a locked unit in a memory care, you know, it's in a long-term care center, but but she still has her independence of her own apartment, and it's getting worse and worse. But before we moved her to that assisted living, she had a fall. She was still in her apartment, and we knew her memory was starting to go. We were getting inklings of it. And so anyway, she was at one of her neighbor's apartments, and she tripped on a rug or something and fell into the lady's closet.
Oh,
she got banged up pretty bad. So
oh my gosh, poor thing.
Yeah, my aunt stayed with her for a week, and then I went up and stayed with her for a week. And she wasn't able to sleep comfortably in her bed, so she was sleeping in her recliner, and I would sleep on the couch right next to her. And the one night we fell asleep watching TV, and I woke up to her like trying to do some kind of gymnastics to get out of her recliner. She couldn't get the foot part down. And I like jarred awake because I heard her wrestling around over there. And all of a sudden she looks at me and she goes, "Where did they go?" And I was like,
"No.
Where did who go?" And she's like, "The ladies." And I'm like, "What ladies?" You know, I'm like looking around.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's just a little lamp on in there. And here she's like trying to she was barely able to move. And now she's like doing gymnastics to get out of this chair. Well, I ended up asking enough questions. So it wasn't anything supernatural. She was remembering the show that was on before we went to sleep. Okay. But she thought that they were in her apartment.
Oh, God. Okay.
But,
well, I mean, hey, that might be what was happening for, at least on some of the occasions, for my grandma.
But it was the fact that, I mean, still, I drilled down enough with her because she said things that triggered with me. And so I figured it out. But that uneasiness of, what do you mean? Who? Where? What? So I'm not saying that, with your grandma, it sounded more to me because it was more Asian. She was always describing like Asian people
That's
and
true.
stuff. Where
Yeah,
my
it
grandma
sounded
was
like people.
I think we fell asleep watching Wonder Woman or something. So she was like describing these, women that had these big muscles and stuff. So kind of figured it out pretty easily, But your grandma was
like
more,
that was on TV.
Yeah, after she started, she's like, well, she had a belt and she had, so at first it was very generic. She's like, she was really muscular. She had the thing on her head. I'm like, oh.
Oh, the TV, the show that we were watching. Yeah. And I guess too, like the stuff that, happened with my grandma. I mean, I don't know what she was watching on Christmas, so who knows, but obviously younger boys are not going to be playing baseball for the Braves. So
no, definitely not. But it's just funny how even just with her saying that though, even though it was like I just automatically went to who's in here with us, because my grandma was one that she did believe in the paranormal. A little backstory, my grandma and grandpa had a son that died when he was 7 years old. He crossed the road to go play at his friend's house, and he got hit by a car and died.
God, I'm so sorry.
And so
that's awful to hear.
It is. I could not imagine. And now that my grandma's going through, it's almost a blessing, which sounds really, may sound really heartless that she has dementia now, because my mom passed. So she lost Mikey when he was 7. My mom passed at 32. Yeah. My grandpa passed a few years after my mom. And then now my uncle just passed a couple years ago. And that was right when the dementia was starting to get bad. So at his funeral, we had to keep reminding her what we were there for.
Oh,
and
that's awful.
So a woman who had 5 children is down to 2. And, she's pushing 90. So it's like, I almost feel like it may be a blessing because she's living her best life right now. It's all about bingo and happy hour. And then it's the reminders.
And she hopefully has forgotten some of the pain.
Right.
You're right. And that is a blessing if that's the case. Obviously, there are tough roads ahead, but hopefully now she can enjoy some peace.
Yeah, she seems to really love where she's staying. And so she's, things have to be reminded. People that, we were talking on FaceTime. I was on FaceTime with her. She was on my phone with me talking to my sister and my nephews. And she looked at the phone and she saw herself down in the corner. She's like, oh,
okay.
I'm on your phone. Or, and then she's like, oh, look at those cute little boys that are on your phone. Like forgetting we're having a conversation.
What was going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or she has the A word in her room so we can drop in her living room.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And anyway, so I'll drop in her apartment sometimes. She's like, look at you so tiny on the little screen. How did you get in that box?
Oh.
Just little innocent things like that.
Like adorable though. Yeah.
It is. It's but like you said, it's kind of that regression back to childhood almost. So
right. And there's an innocence there that I think it opens you up to that sort of those experiences, because again, to them, it's not anything out of the ordinary.
Right.
But for us who aren't with them, like I said, spiritually, on that same kind of understanding,
level,
it can be jarring. Obviously. And I think, she definitely had some strange experiences towards those last couple of years she was with us.
I love the casualness of it though, too. Just where'd they go?
Yeah. Where'd they go? Very just obviously everybody can see them, but they just disappeared.
Right.
And it's just very matter of fact for her.
Well, and isn't Atlanta?
She was great, but
isn't Atlanta known to be super haunted as well?
Yeah. So that's, I will say probably a lot of the East Coast just in general is, but The areas that I lived in like the Atlanta area were more closer. I say Atlanta because that's like the closest major city, and the metropolitan area is massive. But we were really close to, the North Georgia mountains, more so than we were the city of Atlanta. One thing that like my husband and I, when we were living in that area, experienced was that we just had like a lot of strange activity because we were so close to the Appalachian Trailhead.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, there was like a lot of stuff there. There's also a lot of, sadly, like Civil War battlefields there. So there's just like a lot of energy in and around that town. I don't want to say like Atlanta specifically is like really haunted, but like cities close by definitely are. Like
I've heard that kind of like more of the little suburbs outside of Atlanta.
Yeah, like the town of Ackworth. I used to work over in that area when I was in college, and that town. It was so haunted. Like I worked at a vet's office, and that vet's office was just like haunted, but like not by what you think. Like we don't know what was in there, but we had like the practice manager of this hospital. She was very, freaked out by the paranormal, and she always hated it when I brought it up. But one day she pulls me into the office and I'm like, oh God, I'm in trouble. Like, what did I do? She goes, no, look at the security footage. So we're watching it and you can see this figure going back and forth in like the hospital area. So the way that the vet's office was set up was the front office, which was where I spent a lot of my time doing like client service stuff. And then you have the hospital area, which was like surgery and like the exam rooms and like the back part of the, where we brought animals to, do like nail trims or stuff like that, like, basic veterinary care that didn't necessarily need to be done in the room in front of a doctor or by a doctor.
Right.
And then in the back there was the, kennel and like, play, like daycare area, like place for the dogs. So we saw somebody like walking around in like the veterinary, like the actual hospital part, like the middle section of those three areas that I just described. And she was like, that happened last night. I got an alert on my phone and I couldn't see anything. But when I came in and looked at it today on my computer, that mass is there. Like, do you see it freaking out? And I'm like, yeah, like there's definitely something there on this. Like, there's definitely something there. I don't know what it is. And of course she's like, well, I don't think anything broke in. And I'm like, well, you should check. Right. But I mean, I believe you. I'm looking at it. So weird stuff like that. Like just like little pockets, like all around Atlanta are pretty haunted. But like, I think there's one hotel in Atlanta that is, I forget the name of it. I want to say it's like the Ellis, but don't quote me on that.
It sounds familiar.
That city, the city burned down during the Civil War. Like it was completely burnt to the ground. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were more hauntings in Atlanta that like we just don't know about that might be in an apartment building or something like that. But
I have a story for you. I lived in this town in Minnesota. It's called Hinckley. Hinckley was back in the day in the 1800s. I don't know how familiar you are with Minnesota, but Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Not gonna lie, not very.
Yeah. Well, Minneapolis and St. Paul are like the biggest cities in Minnesota.
Right.
Well, Hinckley back in the day was bigger than Minneapolis and St. Paul at the time. So it was back when they were doing all the logging and stuff like that. And so they were, cutting down the trees, using the rivers and stuff. Well, I don't remember what year it was, but basically a huge fire moved through multiple cities and like just decimated a bunch of areas. And people were like boiled in rivers and
oh God.
People were on trains. They were taking the trains out to try to get out of town and got caught in the fires and kind of like the California wildfires that you have. But back when people didn't have a good way to get out of town. And so they're in Hinckley, they're in the graveyard in the heart of town. There's memorial, big, huge memorial. And there's a bunch of unidentified people in this grave.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway,
that's a recipe for disaster.
Right. So kind of like a pauper's grave type thing. But anyway, so at one point I was like 18 or 19. I was pregnant with my son and we were living in Hinckley, and I was driving down the road at night and this fog kind of rolled in, which wasn't uncommon because we lived by they breed fish to repopulate the lakes.
Oh, like a nursery? Or is it called a fishery?
Fishery, there you go.
I don't know.
So something like that. They had a few of those on this road. So, the water, the whatever, it wasn't uncommon for fog to roll in on that road.
Right.
And so anyway, I'm driving, but I come into this fog, and this fog is almost like it's reflective. Like my headlights are shining back at me. And
Right.
I couldn't see at all. And as the fog finally started clearing, I came out on the other side of it, or as I started going through it, got out on the other side of it. All of a sudden, there's a man on the side of the road walking. He has got a long coat with a tail, like the
like
split
period
tail.
clothing kind of.
Yes. A top hat. He has a cane.
What?
He turned around and looked at me. And Courtney, he did not have a face.
Ew. Oh my God. Sorry. I don't know what I was expecting you to say, but like that just gave me goosebumps.
I was so freaked out. I did not stay at my house because it wasn't far from the house I was renting. I stayed at my uncle's house for 2 weeks. I was that scared to go back home. And it didn't even happen.
I don't blame you.
At my house, it was on the road a couple miles
No,
away.
but
I didn't want to drive back there.
Yeah, and that's still so close that like who knows if it could like follow you back. Do you mind me asking, like, does that road by any chance have any known hauntings?
I'm not sure. I really haven't investigated, like dug into it, but so many people died in that area.
Yeah.
And there was just I've heard it's a lot of people have a lot of experiences in that town, but it was just so odd.
Well,
it was
for obvious reasons.
right. It was total period clothing. And, honestly, I thought it was just somebody that was dressed up. He was just strolling down the road. And as I went to pass, he turned and looked at me, and there was just nothing.
That is beyond. Like, I have no words other than like gross.
Right.
But also, what a cool story to be able to share people now. I mean, obviously at the time it was frightening, but like now that's like really kind of an awesome story that you have. Like, thank you for telling me that. That's really
definitely
something.
It just triggered, so, but I've got stories. I mean, like I said, I grew up in a haunted house but a lot of times I think about it and it's like, okay, when I was a kid, did that stuff really happen or was it imagination? But
it's hard.
It is.
It's hard because like I said, that one story from like way back, like my first kind of like seeing something, I go back to that day in my mind all the time. And I'm like, I had to have been seeing, like, I had to have made that up. Like I was 10 and I was, trying to sleep. But at the same time, who knows? Like that was a very real experience that has stuck with me for, a while. So.
Right. Well, and the thing that validates it for me a lot is my mom's friend had a daughter who was the same age as I was, and we were in the same, we went to school together and stuff. So her daughter spent the night quite often. So she remembers these experiences, some of the experiences that we had. So that validates it for me. But I'm like, well, we were young. So it's like, were we just talking about it? And then that's what I'm remembering, so I try to be.
Like the memory kind of was muddied by that.
Right.
Maybe, but
I try to be
it's hard to
skeptic
discredit
with it, but
yeah, it's hard to discredit though. When two people remember something like that.
Right. And
it's like same thing with me and my mom in our bed, like in my bed shaking like that. I still can't explain it.
No.
And like, we were both pretty, like, I wasn't quite an adult, but I was getting there. And obviously she was, full-fledged adult. No, like, there's not, like, that to me was an imagination.
No.
And I think her being there really gives some, credit to it. And I think having, somebody there for a lot of your experiences does the same. So.
Definitely. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This was
thank you so much for having
fun.
me. I had a great time, and I know we have some stuff planned, in the next few weeks to kind of collab more. So
definitely,
I'm just really excited to get into that more. But
me
for now,
too.
I guess thanks so much for having me.
Yes, well, thanks again for coming, and everybody go check out Hauntscast. I'm telling you, the first time I listened to one of her episodes, I binged them all, I think literally in just a matter of a week. I could not stop listening.
You were so sweet for doing that. That is so kind. I really just try to put in, like, try to entertain and, make it not as, I want it to be as objective as possible. And I feel like it's really easy
you
to
do a great job
to get into it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You've been such a kind friend to me.
I love your show. I absolutely love it. When I
love y'all's show so much.
Well, thank you. Well, we will let you go, or I guess I will let you go. Jeremy's not here.
Yeah. Well, tell him I said hey.
I will. Well, thanks again, Courtney.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too.
Well, those sure were some good stories, weren't they, Traci?
Wow, that was such a fun episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. It was crazy hearing all of those stories. I don't know if I'm going to sleep for weeks.
I know I had a good time listening to them.
Yeah?
They're going to keep me up at night for weeks. Jeez.
There's some pretty creepy ones.
Yeah, I'd say.
We'll definitely have to do that again. And we need your stories, listeners. We've started having a few people requesting some true crime stories and some other things, but we need your stories. Send them in to us, please. But with that, we have just a few little housekeeping items. We do have a bunch of crossover episodes scheduled in November and December. It's going to be so fun. You'll get to hear from Amanda from WonNothing again, Courtney from Hauntscast. You'll get to hear from Nisha and Buddha at Hot Garbage. You'll get to hear from Farah in the Conversation Cabin.
It's going to be a good time.
And we'll make sure Jeremy doesn't have to work for those.
We'll see.
And then we also have a Friendsgiving special. So that'll be another bonus episode. We'll have to figure out. We'll probably have to air it on a different day because Thursday is Thanksgiving. Unless we just do it as a Thanksgiving episode. We'll figure out the details, but we have another fun multi-person episode and we'll all be on at the same time versus individual interviews. And Jeremy, do you want to share what your story is going to be about on Thursday?
Yeah, so our next episode is going to be a story called Blood Track.
Ooh.
It's a spooky story about a bat-like creature. More details to come.
And Jeremy wrote this story all by his lonesome.
So not only is it uber spooky and scary, but it's got a comedic side to it. With a lot of Easter eggs if you listen really closely.
Ooh, Easter eggs are always fun.
Easter eggs are fun. If anybody knows what these Easter eggs are after listening to the episode, please share with us either on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any of the socials.
But other than that, do you have any other news for us?
I think that's it, Traci.
All right. Well, keep on creeping on, everybody.
Yeah, smell you later. Bye-bye.
Love you. Goodbye.
Love you. Thanks for hanging out with us here at Total Conundrum. Please make sure to check out our website and blog at TotalConundrum.com for news, upcoming events, merch, bloopers, and additional hysteria. You never know what will pop up, so be sure to follow along. If you want to show your support for Total Conundrum and gain access to all of our bonus content, please visit our Patreon page. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The links are available in our show notes. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, or stories to share, please email us at contact@totalconundrum.com. Episodes are available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate the love. Keep on creeping on, mother cluckers.